The stars looked different this far from home. Jake Morrison pressed his face against a small window of his exploration craft and watched the distant suns twinkle like scattered diamonds. He had been traveling alone for 3 months now, mapping new systems and looking for signs of life. The solitude didn't bother him much. After 20 years in the military and another 10 working construction sites, quiet felt like a luxury. His coffee had gone cold again. Jake reached for the thermos when his sensors started beeping. Something big was moving toward his ship. Really big. Jake pulled up the scanner display and whistled low. The object was at least 50 times the size of his little craft. It had smooth curves and sections that glowed with soft blue light. Definitely not human design. Well, that's new, Jake said to himself. He had always hoped to find alien life, but he figured it would be microbes or maybe some simple plants. A massive spaceship hadn't been on his list of possibilities. The radio crackled to life. Strange sounds came through the speakers, like a mix of clicking insects and wind chimes. Jake grabbed his headset and tried to respond. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the exploration vessel Wanderer. Can you understand me?" The alien sound stopped. After a few seconds, a new voice spoke in perfect English. "Human vessel, you will dock with our ship for cultural exchange. Please follow our guidance beam." A green light appeared on Jake's instruments, showing him where to fly. He could have tried to run, but his ship was slow and theirs was huge. Besides, this was exactly why he had come out here. First contact with aliens was the discovery of a lifetime. Understood. Following your guidance now. Jake's ship was pulled into a massive hangar bay. The walls were covered in panels that shifted color from blue to purple to green. Strange symbols moved across the surfaces, like living text. As his engines shut down, Jake could see figures moving around outside his ship. They didn't look human at all. The airlock sealed behind him with a soft hiss. Jake checked his suit's oxygen levels and grabbed his emergency pack. He had no idea what these aliens wanted, but it seemed best to be prepared. The airlock door opened, and Jake got his first clear look at his hosts. 3 aliens stood waiting for him. The tallest one looked like a giant praying mantis, but with 4 arms instead of 2. Its green skin had metallic shine, and its large eyes reflected the hangar lights. The second alien was shorter and seemed to be made of living crystal. Light moved through its body in slow pulses. The third looked almost human, except for the blue skin and the fact that it had no visible mouth. The mantis-like alien stepped forward and spoke in that same perfect English. "I am Dr. Vextar, chief xenobiologist of this research vessel. This is Security Commander Zephin and Communications Officer Peloff." The mantis gestured to the crystal being and the blue humanoid. "We are from the Galactic Federation. You are the first of your species we have encountered." Jake pulled off his helmet and smiled. "Nice to meet you all. I'm Jake Morrison. I have to say, your English is amazing. How did you learn it so fast?" Dr. Vextar's head tilted in what might have been surprise. "We scanned your ship's computer systems and learned your language from your databases. This is standard protocol for new species contact." "That's pretty impressive. So there are other aliens out there? A whole federation?" "Indeed. Over 400 species belong to the Galactic Federation. We explore the galaxy and bring new civilizations into our peaceful alliance." Jake nodded. This was incredible. Hundreds of alien races working together. Earth would want to know about this immediately. "We would like to learn more about your species." Dr. Vextar continued. "You will stay aboard our ship as our guest while we conduct cultural exchange protocols." The way the mantis said guest made Jake think he didn't have much choice in the matter, but he had signed up for adventure when he left Earth. This certainly qualified. "That sounds great. I'd love to learn about your federation. Do you happen to have anything that resembles human food? I've been living on protein bars for weeks." Commander Zephin's crystal body flashed a deep red color. Jake wondered if that meant something specific. "You are not concerned about your situation?" the commander asked. His voice sounded like breaking glass. Jake looked around the hangar again. The aliens were clearly much more advanced than humans. They had faster ships, better technology, and probably weapons he couldn't imagine, but they were being polite. They spoke his language and called him a guest. Getting worried wouldn't help anything. Well, I came out here hoping to find alien life. Mission accomplished, I'd say. You folks seem friendly enough. The three aliens exchanged looks. Dr. Vextar made some clicking sounds that his translator didn't convert to English. Most species show significant distress when first encountering us, the doctor said carefully. Jake shrugged. I was a combat engineer for 20 years. It takes a lot to rattle me. Besides, if you wanted to hurt me, you could have just blown up my ship instead of inviting me over for dinner. More clicking sounds passed between the aliens. Commander Zephin's crystal body was now pulsing a steady orange color. Very well. Dr. Vextar said finally, Officer Peloff will show you to your quarters. We will begin the cultural exchange process tomorrow. The blue alien led Jake through corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. The walls were covered in moving patterns that hurt to look at directly. Jake found himself wondering how the ship's artificial gravity worked. It felt exactly like Earth normal, which seemed like an odd coincidence. His room was simple but comfortable. The bed was the right size for a human, which meant they had definitely been scanning his ship for a while before making contact. A wall panel showed what looked like a menu, with symbols he couldn't read. Jake sat on the bed and pulled out his personal log recorder. Day 93 of exploration mission. Made first contact with alien species, calling themselves the Galactic Federation. 3 aliens, very advanced technology. They seem peaceful but are clearly studying me. Going to cooperate and see what I can learn about their civilization. Food situation unclear, but I'm sure we can work something out. He turned off the recorder and lay back on the surprisingly comfortable bed. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. For now, Jake was content to be the first human to sleep on an alien spaceship. It beat another night of listening to his engines rattle. Outside his small window, the stars continued their eternal dance. Jake watched them until his eyes grew heavy and sleep took him far from home. Jake woke up to the sound of soft chimes. The wall panel was glowing with new symbols, and he could smell something that reminded him of bacon. His stomach growled loudly. 3 months of protein bars had made him dream about real food. The door opened and Officer Pelf entered carrying a tray. The blue alien set it down on a small table and gestured for Jake to eat. The food looked like scrambled eggs and strips of something that could have been meat. It tasted better than it looked. Thank you, Jake said between bites. This is really good. What kind of meat is this? Peloff made a series of musical sounds that the translator turned into words. Synthesized protein based on your nutritional requirements. We are glad it is acceptable. Dr. Vextar appeared in the doorway. The big mantis moved with surprising grace for something so large. Good morning, Jake Morrison. I trust you slept well. Like a baby, that bed is more comfortable than the one I had back on Earth. Excellent. Today we begin the cultural exchange process. We have prepared several scenarios to help us understand human psychology and behavior patterns. Jake finished the last of his breakfast and wiped his mouth. Sounds interesting. What kind of scenarios? Interactive holographic simulations. They will place you in various situations that we have found useful for understanding new species. Please follow me. They walked through more corridors filled with moving lights and strange sounds. Jake noticed other aliens working at stations along the walls. Most of them stopped to stare at him as he passed. Word of the human had clearly spread through the ship. The testing room was huge, with smooth black walls that rose up into darkness. Dr. Vextar led Jake to a small platform in the center of the room. The holographic projectors will create realistic environments around you, the doctor explained. Simply react naturally to whatever you encounter. We will be monitoring from the observation deck. Jake looked up and saw a row of windows high above. Several alien faces were pressed against the glass, watching him with interest. Okay, I'm ready when you are. The lights dimmed and the room filled with mist. When it cleared, Jake found himself standing in a dark forest. Tall trees blocked out most of the light, and strange sounds echoed from the shadows. The air smelled of rotting leaves and something else. Something that reminded him of wet fur. A low growl came from behind him. Jake turned and saw glowing red eyes watching him from the darkness between the trees. The eyes were huge, at least 3 feet apart. Whatever they belonged to was big. More growls answered the first one. Jake counted at least 6 pairs of eyes surrounding him. The creature started to move, staying in the shadows but circling closer. He could hear their heavy footsteps in the dead leaves. Jake stood still and watched the creatures move. They were trying to surround him before attacking. It was smart pack behavior, but they were being too obvious about it. Real predators would have been quieter. "Computer, can you turn up the lighting a bit?" Jake called out. "I can't see these things clearly enough to get a good look at them." One of the creatures stepped into a patch of moonlight. It looked like a cross between a wolf and a bear, with massive claws and teeth like daggers. Its fur was black and seemed to absorb light. The creature opened its mouth and let out a roar that shook the trees. "Wow, that's impressive," Jake said. He pulled out his personal recorder and started taking notes. Quadrupedal predator, approximately 8 feet long, 4 feet at the shoulder. Pack hunting behavior. The sound production is interesting, too. I wonder if that roar has some kind of sonic component designed to disorient prey. The creature charged at him. Jake stepped to the side and watched it run past. Movement pattern is inefficient for an actual predator. Too much energy wasted on the dramatic approach. A real predator that size would go for a quick, silent takedown. Up in the observation deck, Dr. Vextar was making rapid notes on his data pad. Commander Zephin leaned over to look at the readings from Jake's biosensors. "His heart rate is barely elevated," the crystal alien said. "No signs of fear response at all." "Perhaps the simulation isn't realistic enough," suggested another researcher. "These shadow beasts usually cause immediate panic in test subjects." Dr. Vextar watched Jake examine the holographic creatures with scientific curiosity. The human was acting like a researcher studying interesting specimens, not like prey being hunted by deadly predators. "Increase the intensity," the doctor ordered. The forest grew darker. More creatures emerged from the shadows, and their growls became louder and more menacing. The pack started closing in from all sides, showing more teeth and claws. Jake continued taking notes. Pack coordination is good, but the threat display is overdone. Real predators don't waste energy on intimidation if they're actually planning to attack. They just attack. One of the creatures lunged at him with claws extended. Jake moved aside again, and the holographic beast passed right through where he had been standing. "The physics modeling needs work too," Jake added. "That creature didn't account for momentum when it changed direction. In real life, something that size would have trouble with quick turns." Dr. Vextar's mandibles clicked with frustration. The shadow beast simulation had never failed to produce a strong fear response. Most species either ran in terror or collapsed from psychological shock. Jake was treating it like an educational experience. "In simulation," the doctor commanded. The forest disappeared, and Jake found himself back on the platform in the testing room. He looked up at the observation windows and waved. "That was fun. The holographic technology is amazing." The creatures looked almost real. Dr. Vextar's voice came through the room speakers. "Did you not find the experience frightening?" Jake thought about it for a moment. "Not really. I mean, they were obviously holograms, so there was no actual danger. And the behavior patterns were interesting from a scientific standpoint. Are they based on real creatures from somewhere in the galaxy?" More clicking sounds came from the speakers as the aliens had a rapid conversation in their own language. "We will conduct additional tests," Dr. Vextar announced finally. "Please remain on the platform." The room filled with mist again. This time, when it cleared, Jake was standing on a narrow ledge high above a deep canyon. The wind was strong and cold, and the ledge was barely wide enough for his feet. Far below, sharp rocks jutted up from the canyon floor. Jake looked down at the drop and estimated the distance. Maybe 1,000 feet? The terminal velocity for a human body would be around 120 miles per hour. Definitely fatal on impact. He tested the stability of the ledge with his foot. The holographic rock felt solid under his weight. The haptic feedback is really impressive. It actually feels like real stone. A section of the ledge crumbled away right next to his feet. Jake grabbed the rock wall for balance and looked down at the falling debris. "The physics engine is much better on this one," he said approvingly. That looked exactly like real rockfall. In the observation deck, the alien researchers were staring at their instruments in disbelief. Every other species they had tested showed extreme stress responses to the height simulation. Many subjects became completely paralyzed with fear. Jake was giving them a technical review. Perhaps humans simply don't experience fear the way other species do, suggested one researcher. Commander Zephin's crystal body was flashing warning colors. A species without fear will be incredibly dangerous. Fear is what keeps most creatures from taking excessive risks. Dr. Vextar was beginning to worry that they made a serious mistake in bringing Jake aboard their ship. The lead simulation ended, and Jake found himself back on the platform. He stretched his arms and looked up at the observation deck. The aliens were having what looked like a heated discussion. Their voices were too quiet for the translator to pick up, but he could see a lot of gesturing and flashing lights. "Everything okay up there?" Jake called out. Dr. Vextar's voice came through the speakers after a long pause. "We are adjusting our testing parameters. Please prepare for the next simulation." "Sure thing. These are really educational. Do you mind if I ask what you're trying to learn about humans?" "We are studying your species' psychological responses to various stimuli. This helps us understand how to best integrate new civilizations into the Galactic Federation." That made sense to Jake. If you were going to have hundreds of different alien species working together, you'd need to understand how they all thought and reacted to things. It was like a personality test, but with holograms. The room filled with mist again. When it cleared, Jake was standing in a small, dark chamber. The walls were close enough that he could touch them with his outstretched arms. The ceiling was so low he had to duck his head. The only light came from a few dim panels that flickered and sparked. The chamber started getting smaller. The walls moved inward with a grinding sound that echoed in confined space. Jake could feel the air getting thicker as the room compressed around him. "Claustrophobia simulation," Jake said to himself. "Classic fear response test." He examined the moving walls while he still had room to move around. The metal looked realistic, with scratches and dents that suggested age and wear. The mechanical sound of the compression system was particularly well done. "The sound design is excellent," Jake announced to his unseen observers. "Really sells the idea that this is old, heavy machinery." The walls continued closing in. Jake had to turn sideways to fit in the shrinking space. Most people would be panicking by now, but Jake found himself impressed by the engineering involved in the simulation. "I'm curious about the structural mechanics here," he said, running his hand along the moving wall. "In real life, you need massive hydraulic systems to move metal walls this thick. The power requirements would be enormous." The ceiling started moving down, as well as the walls moving in. Jake had to crouch as the space became even smaller. He could feel the walls pressing against his shoulders. "The haptic feedback is still amazing," Jake continued. "I can actually feel the pressure. The temperature simulation is good too. It's getting warmer as the space gets smaller, just like it would in real life." Up in the observation deck, the alien researchers were staring at their readings in disbelief. Jake's biosignature showed mild interest and curiosity, but no signs of distress or panic. "His breathing is completely normal," reported the medical officer. "No increase in heart rate, no stress hormones, no fight or flight response." "Perhaps the simulation isn't realistic enough," suggested Commander Zephin. Dr. Vextar shook his head. "This simulation has caused complete psychological breakdown in 97% of test subjects. The remaining 3% required immediate medical intervention." "Then what's wrong with this human?" The walls were now so close that Jake had to stand with his arms pressed against his sides. The ceiling forced him to bend over at an uncomfortable angle. A normal person would be screaming by now. Instead, Jake was examining the ventilation system. "I notice you got air circulation fans built into the ceiling," he observed. "That's good attention to detail. In a real compressed space, carbon dioxide buildup would be a major problem. The airflow suggests this chamber could theoretically support someone for several hours, even at minimum size." The simulation ended abruptly. Jake found himself back on the platform, blinking in the normal room lighting. "That was really well designed," he said. The psychological pressure was impressive. I could see how that would be really frightening for someone with claustrophobia. Dr. Vextar's voice came through the speakers, sounding strained. You experienced no discomfort during that simulation? Well, physically it was uncomfortable. Being cramped up like that isn't pleasant. But the engineering was fascinating. How do you make the holograms feel so solid? There was a long silence from the observation deck. Jake could see the aliens having another intense discussion. We're going to try a different approach, Dr. Vextar finally announced. The next simulation placed Jake in what looked like a medical facility. The walls were white and sterile, lined with surgical tools that gleamed under harsh lights. In the center of the room was an operating table with restraints still attached. Strange alien creatures scuttled across the floor. They looked like oversized insects with too many legs and eyes that reflected the light like black mirrors. They made wet, clicking sounds as they moved. "Oh, insects," Jake said with interest. "Are these based on real species from your homeworld?" One of the creatures was as big as a house cat, with mandibles that dripped green fluid. It approached Jake, with its wings buzzing angrily. Jake crouched down to get a better look. The detail work is incredible. Look at the way the light catches the wing membranes. And that green fluid, is it supposed to be acidic? The way it's eating into the floor suggests a pretty strong corrosive. More creatures emerged from hidden spaces around the room. Soon Jake was surrounded by dozens of chittering aliens. They started climbing on him, their sharp legs scratching against his clothes. "The tactile sensation is amazing," Jake said, holding still while the creatures crawled over him. "I can actually feel their weight and the way their legs grip. This must require incredibly sophisticated haptic projectors." He gently picked up one of the smaller creatures and examined it closely. The anatomy is really interesting. 6 legs for wings, compound eyes. Are these modeled after actual evolutionary patterns, or did you design them from scratch? The creature in his hands opened its mandibles and hissed. Jake nodded approvingly. Good defensive behavior. In real life, insects this size would probably be pretty aggressive if handled. The sound production is realistic too. In the observation deck, Dr. Vextar was rapidly scrolling through test data from hundreds of other species. Every single one had shown extreme fear responses to the insect scenario. Many had required sedation to prevent injury from panic attacks. Jake was conducting a zoological examination. "End simulation," the doctor ordered. The medical facility and its crawling inhabitants vanished. Jake stood alone on the platform, looking slightly disappointed. Those were really fascinating creatures. Are they based on anything real? I'd love to study the actual species if they exist. Dr. Vextar found himself at a loss for words. In over 200 years of xenobiological research, he had never encountered a species that reacted to fierce stimuli with scientific curiosity. "We need to consult with the Federation Council," Commander Zephin said quietly. "This human may represent a completely new category of threat. He hasn't shown any aggressive behavior," Dr. Vextar pointed out. "That may be the most concerning thing of all." The alien research team gathered in their main conference room. Dr. Vextar spread the test results across the holographic display table, while Commander Zephin paced back and forth, his crystal body flashing angry red colors. 3 standard fear response tests, Dr. Vextar said, reviewing the data. 0 fear indicators. 0 stress responses. The human treated each simulation like an educational experience. "This is unprecedented," added Dr. Cathera, the ship's head psychologist. Her tentacles writhed nervously as she spoke. "In 400 years of Federation contact protocols, we have never encountered a species completely immune to fear." Commander Zephin stopped pacing and faced the group. "A species without fear is a species without natural limitations. They would take risks that no rational being would consider. They could be incredibly dangerous." Officer Peloff, who had been quietly reviewing the data, looked up from his tablet. "Perhaps we should try the Phase 5 protocols." The room fell silent. Dr. Vextar's compound eyes focused on the communications officer. Phase 5 is reserved for species that show extreme aggression or predator behaviors. The human has been completely peaceful. but has also been completely unafraid. Peloff pointed out, the Phase 5 scenarios are designed to test responses to apex predators. If anything can trigger a fear response in this human, it would be our most advanced predator simulations. Dr. Cathera's tentacles turned pale. The Varathian Deathstalker simulation has never failed to produce complete psychological breakdown. We've had test subjects require months of therapy after exposure. Commander Zephin considered this. The Deathstalker was the galaxy's most feared predator. It combined the worst aspects of dozens of apex hunters into a single, terrifying creature. If Jake could remain calm when faced with that monster, it would confirm their worst fears about humanity. Do it, the commander decided, but have medical teams standing by, and increase the containment fields around the testing chamber. Dr. Vextar was reluctant, but he understood the necessity. They needed to know what they were dealing with. Jake was enjoying a lunch of synthesized pasta when the call came to return to the testing chamber. The food was surprisingly good, though he missed the taste of real tomatoes. He made a mental note to ask if the ship's synthesizers could replicate Earth vegetables. Ready for more tests? Jake asked as he entered the chamber. These simulations are really impressive. The technology must have taken decades to develop. Dr. Vextar's voice came through the speakers, and Jake noticed it sounded more tense than before. This will be our final test, Jake Morrison. The scenario may be more intense than the previous simulations. That's fine. I'm curious to see what else your holographic systems can do. Jake took his position on the platform. The lights dimmed and the familiar mist began to fill the room. When it cleared, Jake found himself in what looked like an ancient stone chamber. The walls were covered with carvings that seemed to move in the flickering torchlight. The air was thick and humid, with the smell of decay and something else. Something that made his instincts twitch with old memories. A low rumble echoed through the chamber. The sound was deep and resonant, like distant thunder mixed with growl. Jake felt it in his chest as much as heard it. Now that's impressive, Jake said. The subsonic components really add to the atmosphere. The rumble grew louder. Shadows moved in the corners of the chamber, too dark and too fluid to be natural. The temperature dropped suddenly, and Jake could see his breath misting in the cold air. Something huge shifted in the darkness beyond the torchlight. Jake heard the scrape of claws against stone and the wet sound of something breathing. The breathing was wrong somehow, too deep and with too many pauses. The sound design is incredible, Jake observed. Whoever programmed this really understands how to build tension. A massive shape emerged from the shadows. The Varathian Deathstalker stood 12 feet tall, with a body like a cross between a spider and an octopus. Its skin was black and seemed to absorb light. 8 tentacles writhed around a central body lined with rows of serrated teeth. Each tentacle ended in a cluster of claws that dripped with acid. The creature had no visible eyes, but Jake could feel it focusing on him with predatory intelligence. The Deathstalker opened its mouth and roared. The sound was indescribable. Part scream, part growl, part psychic assault designed to paralyze prey with terror. The roar echoed off the stone walls and seemed to go on forever. Jake watched the creature with professional interest. That's really something. The size is impressive, and the tentacle movement looks completely natural. The bioluminescent patches are a nice touch, too. The Deathstalker began moving toward him. Its tentacles left smoking trails on the stone floor, where the acid dripped. Each step shook the ground. The creature's mouth opened wider, revealing multiple rows of teeth and a throat that seemed to descend into infinite darkness. Jake studied the approaching monster and nodded approvingly. The locomotion is really well animated. You can see how it distributes its weight across multiple limbs. And the acid effect on the stone looks completely realistic. In the observation deck, every alien researcher was staring at their instruments in shock. The Deathstalker simulation was broadcasting fear-inducing psychic frequencies at maximum power. Most species couldn't even remain conscious when exposed to the creature's presence. Jake was giving them a technical review. The Deathstalker reached out with one of its tentacles, the acid-dripping claws inches from Jake's face. The psychic fear projection intensified. Design caused immediate cardiac arrest in most species. Jake examined the tentacle with scientific curiosity. The detail work on the claws is amazing, and the acid simulation, I can actually smell the chemical burn. That's incredibly sophisticated programming. He paused for a moment, thinking, then he looked up at the observation windows. Hey, do you folks happen to have anything I could use as a fork? Preferably something with at least 3 prongs. The Death Stalker froze in mid-attack. In the observation deck, Dr. Vextar nearly dropped his data pad. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? The doctor's voice came through the speakers. A fork, Jake said patiently. You know, eating utensil, 3 or 4 prongs, about this long. He held up his hands to indicate the size. This thing looks pretty tasty, and I'm getting kind of hungry again. The silence from the observation deck stretched on for several seconds. You wish to eat the predator? Dr. Vextar asked carefully. Jake nodded. Oh, yeah. Look at the size of this thing. There's got to be 50 pounds of good meat on those tentacles alone. Probably tastes like a cross between lobster and squid. And the main body looks like it would be great for steaks. He walked around the frozen Death Stalker, examining it from different angles. I'm thinking you want to cook the tentacles separately from the body. The acid sacs would need to be removed first, obviously. But once you clean them out, tentacle meat is usually really tender. The body would be better grilled or roasted. Jake looked up at the observation deck again. Do you have any idea what the nutritional content might be? Protein levels, fat content, that sort of thing? The simulation ended abruptly. The Death Stalker vanished, and Jake found himself alone on the platform. Ah, come on, Jake said, sounding disappointed. I was just getting hungry looking at it. Can you bring it back? In the observation deck, Dr. Vextar was frantically checking his equipment. Run full diagnostics on all systems. Check the fear response broadcasts, the psychic projection arrays, everything. All systems are functioning perfectly, reported the technician. The simulation was operating at maximum intensity. Commander Zephin's crystal body was flashing colors Jake had never seen before. He wanted to eat the Death Stalker. With a fork, added Dr. Cadera faintly. Dr. Vextar stared down at the humans standing patiently on the testing platform. Everything he thought he knew about xenobiology had just been turned upside down. Emergency session, the doctor announced. Contact the Federation Council immediately. We may have a situation. Jake was back in his quarters, working on his personal log, when he heard raised voices in the corridor outside. The alien languages were being translated, but the emotional tone was clear even without words. The crew was upset about something. Day 94, Jake recorded. Completed several interesting psychological tests with the research team. The holographic technology here is beyond anything we have on Earth. The aliens seemed concerned about something, though a lot of excited conversations in the hallways. He turned off the recorder and went to the small window. The stars looked the same as always, but he could see other ships moving in the distance. More Federation vessels, judging by their similar design. Word of his presence was clearly spreading. Meanwhile, in the ship's main conference room, the emergency session was in full swing. Dr. Vextar had called in xenobiologists from 3 other vessels, and they were all reviewing Jake's test results with growing alarm. Show them the Death Stalker footage. Commander Zephin instructed. The holographic display replayed Jake's encounter with the simulated predator. The assembled scientists watched in stunned silence as the human examined the terrifying creature and asked for eating utensils. Dr. Silek, a renowned psychologist from the research vessel Harmony of Stars, was the first to speak. This is impossible. The fear response is fundamental to survival. No species can evolve without it. The human clearly has some form of fear response, Dr. Vextar replied, but it doesn't seem to activate in response to predators or dangerous situations. Then what has frightened them? Asked Dr. Moltar, whose 4 eyes were focused intently on the data streams. Dr. Vextar had been wondering the same thing. They had tried standard predator scenarios, claustrophobia, heights, and swarm attacks. None had produced even a mild stress response from Jake. Perhaps we should ask him directly, suggested Officer Peloff from his position at the communications console. That could compromise the integrity of our research, Dr. Kethera protested. Commander Zephin's crystal form flashed a decisive blue. Our research is already compromised. We're dealing with something outside our understanding. Direct inquiry may be our only option. 20 minutes later, Jake found himself in a comfortable meeting room instead of the testing chamber. Dr. Vextar and several other aliens sat around a curved table, with Jake positioned across from them. The setup felt more like a job interview than a scientific experiment. Jake Morrison, Dr. Vextar began, we would like to ask you some questions about your species and your homeworld. Sure, Jake replied. I'm happy to help. Though I should mention that I'm not exactly an expert on xenobiology or diplomacy. I'm just an engineer who likes to explore. Tell us about Earth, Dr. Vextar requested. What is your planet like? Jake thought about how to describe his home to beings who had never seen it. Well, it's mostly water, about 70% oceans. The land masses have lots of different climate zones, deserts, forests, mountains, polar regions. It's a pretty diverse planet. What about the life forms on Earth? Oh, we got tons of different species. Mammals, reptiles, birds, fish, insects, plants. Millions of different kinds of life. Jake paused, though a lot of them are pretty dangerous. Dr. Vextar leaned forward with interest. Dangerous how? Well, take the oceans. We've got sharks that can bite through steel cables, jellyfish that can kill you with a single sting, and squids with tentacles as long as your ship's corridors. On land, there are bears that weigh as much as small vehicles, snakes that can inject enough venom to kill an elephant, and big cats that can break your neck with one bite. The aliens exchanged glances. This sounded like a death world. But surely humans avoid these dangerous creatures? Dr. Moltar asked. Jake laughed. Are you kidding? We hunt most of them for food. Shark fin soup, calamari, venison, snake meat. Some of the most dangerous animals make the best meals. Dr. Silek's breathing apparatus made a wheezing sound. You hunt predators for food? All the time. Though we also farm a lot of animals now. Cows, pigs, chickens. We domesticated wolves into dogs, and we keep cats as pets even though they're basically tiny killing machines. Your species domesticated wolves? Dr. Vextar asked in amazement. Oh, yeah, thousands of years ago. Now they're man's best friend. We use them for hunting, herding, protection, companionship. Some people love their dogs more than their family members. Jake was warming to the subject. And that's just the animals. We've also got to deal with the weather. Hurricanes with winds that can level cities, tornadoes that can pick up houses, blizzards that bury everything under 10 feet of snow, lightning strikes that can kill you instantly, floods that wash away entire towns. The room was completely silent now. Every alien was staring at Jake with what he was starting to recognize as horror. Then there are the geological events. Jake continued. Earthquakes that split the ground open, volcanoes that can bury whole cities in ash, tsunamis that are basically moving walls of water hundreds of feet high. Dr. Kethera's tentacles had turned completely pale. How does your species survive on such a world? We adapt, Jake said simply. We build better shelters, develop warning systems, learn to predict dangerous weather, and we spread out across the whole planet, so that natural disasters can't wipe us all out at once. But surely you must live in constant fear, Dr. Silek protested. Jake shook his head. Not really. I mean, you learn to be careful. Don't swim where there are sharks. Don't hike in bear country without proper precautions. Don't build houses in flood zones. But fear doesn't help much. If you spent all your time being afraid, you'd never get anything done. He leaned back in his chair. Besides, humans are pretty good at dealing with dangerous situations. We're persistence hunters. We don't run faster than our prey, but we can chase it until it collapses from exhaustion. We sweat to cool down, so we can keep going when other animals overheat. We work in groups and use tools. We're basically designed to outlast and outthink anything that tries to kill us. Dr. Vextar was rapidly taking notes. You said persistence hunters. Your species hunted other animals by chasing them to exhaustion? For millions of years, before we developed agriculture, humans would literally run animals to death. We'd track a deer or an antelope for hours, sometimes days, until it couldn't run anymore. Then we'd kill it with spears and rocks. And this hunting behavior shaped your evolution? Jake nodded. Absolutely. Our whole physiology is designed for endurance hunting. Long legs for distance running, efficient cooling systems, hands that can make and throw weapons, brains that can track prey over long distances and predict their behavior. The pieces were starting to fall into place for Dr. Vextar. Humans weren't prey animals that had somehow lost their fear response. They were predators. Apex predators from a world where everything was trying to kill everything else. When you look at the creatures in our simulations, the doctor asked carefully, "What do you see?" Commander Zephin stood in his private office, his crystal body flickering with agitated colors as he reviewed the test data for the 100th time. The humans' responses defied everything the Federation knew about psychology and evolution. According to their models, Jake Morrison should not exist. Dr. Vextar entered the office carrying a data pad filled with additional research. "I've been analyzing the biological data from Jake's homeworld," the scientist announced. "The situation is worse than we thought." "Explain," Commander Zephin requested. "Earth isn't just a dangerous world. It's a death world by any rational standard. The atmospheric composition alone will be toxic to most Federation species. 21% oxygen creates an environment so reactive that metals spontaneously combust. The gravity is twice what most civilized species consider comfortable." Dr. Vextar activated his holographic display, showing images of Earth's wildlife. But the real problem is the ecosystem. Every niche is filled with predators. Apex predators hunting other apex predators. And humans evolved to compete with all of them. Commander Zephin studied the images with growing alarm. These creatures are real, completely real. And Jake's species doesn't just coexist with them. They've turned most of them into food sources or pets. The creature they call a house cat has a 90% success rate when hunting. They keep them in their homes for companionship. The commander's crystal form flashed deep red, a species that keeps predators as pets and hunts apex predators for food. No wonder he wasn't afraid of our simulations. "There's more," Dr. Vextar continued. "I've been analyzing Jake's behavior patterns. When he looks at our test subjects, his pupils dilate slightly and he focuses on specific anatomical features, movement patterns, vulnerable areas, estimated meat content. He's evaluating them as prey," Commander Zephin realized. Exactly. Jake Morrison isn't failing to show fear responses. He's showing predator responses. When he sees our Death Stalker, his instincts are telling him it's a potential meal, not a threat. Commander Zephin made a decision that would haunt him for years. We need to conduct one final test. A real scenario with actual danger. Dr. Vextar's compound eyes widened. That would violate every Federation protocol for first contact situations. The protocols assume we're dealing with a normal species. If Jake Morrison is representative of human capabilities, we need to understand exactly what we're facing before we make contact with his homeworld. Against his better judgment, Dr. Vextar agreed to the plan. They would create a scenario with real danger and see how Jake responded when his life was actually at risk. The cargo bay on Deck 7 had been sealed off for maintenance for several weeks. It was a perfect location for their unauthorized test. The bay was large, dimly lit, and contained enough obstacles and hiding places to create a realistic hunting scenario. Their unwilling test subject was already in place. The Razorhawk had been captured during a survey mission on Kepler 442b, a world known for its aggressive wildlife. The creature looked like a cross between a bird and a fighter jet, with metallic feathers that could slice through steel and a neurotoxic bite that could paralyze most species within minutes. The Razorhawk was supposed to have been transferred to the xenobiology lab days ago, but a computer error had left it forgotten in the cargo bay's containment unit. When the containment field failed during a routine power fluctuation, the creature had escaped into the bay's maintenance tunnels. Commander Zephin's plan was simple. They would tell Jake that there had been an accident, that a dangerous creature was loose in the cargo bay, and that he needed to remain there while they prepared a rescue team. They would monitor his response to real danger from a species that could actually kill him. Jake Morrison. Commander Zephin's voice echoed to the ship's communication system. Please report to Cargo Base 7 immediately. We have a situation that requires your assistance. Jake thought about it. Interesting examples of evolutionary adaptation. Mostly, the shadow beasts in the first test were pretty inefficient hunters, but the basic body plan was sound. The Death Stalker was really impressive, probably the result of millions of years of evolution in a hostile environment. He paused. Though I have to say, most of them look pretty tasty. Especially that big tentacle creature. I bet if you cleaned it properly and cooked it right, it would be delicious. Dr. Vextar set down his datapad and looked at his fellow researchers. They had their answer. When Jake looked at the galaxy's most feared predators, he didn't see monsters. He saw a dinner. I think, Dr. Vextar said slowly, we need to completely reevaluate our understanding of your species. Jake smiled, happy to help however I can. So, when do I get to meet some of the other Federation members? I'm really curious about your different cultures and technologies. The aliens looked at each other with expressions that Jake was learning to read as concern. That, Commander Zephin said, may be complicated. The emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council convened on the massive space station Deep Unity, located at the heart of Federation territory. Representatives from over 200 species filled the circular chamber, their various forms of communication, creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, lights, and translated voices. Council leader Tovash, an ancient crystalline being whose body contained the memories of 1,000 generations, called the assembly to order. The topic under discussion was classified at the highest levels, the discovery of a new species with unprecedented predatory capabilities. Dr. Vextar stood at the central podium, his 4 arms gesturing as he presented his research findings. Behind him, holographic displays showed Jake's test results, biological data from Earth, and security footage of the Razorhawk incident. The species calls itself human, Dr. Vextar explained to the assembled delegates. They originate from a world so dangerous that our classification systems lack adequate terminology. Every ecosystem is dominated by apex predators, and humans evolved to compete with all of them. Representative Clicksoff of the Defensive Pact raised a tentacle. Surely you exaggerate. Dr. Vextar, no world could support multiple apex predators in the same ecosystem. The holographic display shifted to show footage from Earth's nature documentaries that Jake had stored on his ship's computer. The council watched in horrified fascination as great white sharks hunted seals, lions stalked zebras, and crocodiles ambushed antelope at waterholes. These images were recorded on the human homeworld. Dr. Vextar continued. What you are seeing represents normal daily life on Earth. Predation events occur billions of times per day across the planet. Council leader Tolvash's crystal form dimmed with concern. What is the humans' response to these predators? They hunt them for food, Dr. Vextar replied simply. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alarmed sounds. Representative Veltar, the Pacifist Alliance's breathing apparatus, wheezed rapidly. Impossible. No prey species could survive by hunting its own predators. Humans are not prey, Dr. Vextar corrected. Our analysis indicates they are apex predators themselves. Persistence hunters who evolved to chase down and kill anything they encounter. Admiral Krondar, the Military Defense Council, leaned forward with interest. What are their combat capabilities? Dr. Vextar displayed the footage of Jake capturing the Razorhawk. The human subject neutralized a Class A predator in under 10 minutes using improvised tools. He showed no fear response and treated the encounter as an educational opportunity. The military representatives exchanged concerned glances. The Razorhawk was used as a benchmark for military training exercises. Most Federation soldiers required advanced weapons and armor to safely contain one. What does a human want? Asked Representative Mordun of the Economic Union. Food, primarily, Dr. Vextar replied, and he has expressed interest in learning about Federation cultures and technologies. He appears to be genuinely friendly and curious. A friendly apex predator, Council leader Tovash mused. This presents unique diplomatic challenges. At that moment, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts filled the chamber as urgent reports came in from across Federation space. Council leader announced the station's communication officer. We're receiving priority transmissions from 17 different sectors. Multiple ships are reporting contact with human vessels. The chamber fell silent. Dr. Vextar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. How many ships? Current count is over 40 human vessels, spreading across Federation territory. They're not responding to standard contact protocols. Admiral Krondar was already activating his military communication systems. Are they showing hostile intent? Negative, Admiral. They appear to be exploring. Long-range sensors indicate the ships are conducting scientific surveys and resource mapping. Council leader Tolvash processed this information with growing alarm. Dr. Vextar, you said you encountered one human ship. That's correct. A small exploration vessel with a single occupant. Then these 40 ships represent a coordinated expedition. The humans are not isolated explorers. They are an expanding civilization. The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. If Jake Morrison was representative of a species, then 40 ships meant 40 apex predators spreading across the galaxy, cataloging everything they encountered as potential resources or threats. Representative Clixotha's tentacles writhed with agitation. We must establish a quarantine immediately, prevent them from making contact with other species, until we understand their intentions. It may be too late for that, Admiral Krondar reported grimly. Several human vessels have already made contact with shipping lanes in the Outer Rim. Trade ships are reporting encounters with friendly beings who ask many questions about local fauna. Dr. Vextar realized with horror that Jake's curiosity about alien creatures was not unique. An entire species of persistence hunters was now loose in the galaxy, evaluating everything they met as potential prey, predator, or pet. What do we know about their technology? Council leader Tolvash asked. Admiral Krondar consulted his tactical displays. Their ships are primitive by our standards, but functional. Chemical propulsion systems, basic fusion power, simple weapons. However, they appear to be learning rapidly. Several vessels have already modified their systems with scavenged Federation technology. They're adapting, Dr. Vextar observed, just like Jake did during our tests. When presented with new technology, they immediately figure out how to use it for their own purposes. The council chamber was filled with the sounds of worried delegation as representatives from hundreds of worlds contemplated the implications of humanity's expansion into their territory. Representative Eltar of the Pacifist Alliance activated her speaking platform. Perhaps we should attempt direct communication. The human you studied appeared reasonable. If we explain our concerns, they might be willing to limit their expansion. And if they refuse? Admiral Krondar asked bluntly. Then we would face the prospect of military conflict with a species that views our most dangerous predators as food sources. Council leader Tolvash replied. Dr. Vextar found himself in the uncomfortable position of defending the species that had turned his understanding of xenobiology upside down. Council leader, if I may, despite Jake Morrison's predatory nature, he showed no aggression toward us. He was curious, cooperative, and even friendly. His questions about eating our test subjects appear to be motivated by scientific interest rather than hostile intent. Scientific interest in eating us, Representative Clixoth pointed out. The human distinction between food and friend may be more fluid than we assume, Dr. Vextar conceded. But Jake showed clear signs of sapient reasoning and social behavior. He is not a mindless predator. Council leader Tolvash's form flickered as he processed input from thousands of predecessor memories. We have 3 options. First, attempt peaceful contact and negotiation. Second, establish a quarantine zone around human space and forbid contact. Third, preemptive military action to prevent human expansion. The chamber erupted in debate. The Pacifist Alliance advocated for immediate diplomatic contact. The Defensive Pact wanted a military quarantine. The Economic Union was concerned about trade route disruptions. Admiral Krondar cut through the arguments with a harsh truth. Any military action against the humans would require extensive research into their capabilities and weaknesses. We know nothing about their homeworld defenses, their numbers, or their full technological capacity. A failed preemptive strike could result in a very angry species of apex predators declaring war on the entire Federation. And a successful diplomatic contact could result in humanity joining the Federation as allies, Dr. Vextar added. The defensive capabilities of Persistence hunters could be invaluable against external threats to our territory. Council leader Tolvash called for order. We will vote on our response to the human expansion, all in favor of attempting diplomatic contact. The chamber filled with lights, sounds, and gestures as the representatives cast their votes. When the count was completed, Council leader Tolvash announced the results. The motion carries by a narrow margin. We will attempt peaceful first contact with the human species. Dr. Vextar, you'll serve as our primary xenobiological consultant. Admiral Krondar, prepare defensive measures in case negotiations fail. Dr. Vextar felt the weight of galactic history settling on his shoulders. The success or failure of humanity's integration into the galactic community would depend largely on his understanding of their psychology and behavior. He just hoped that understanding was correct. Meanwhile, aboard the research vessel Stellar Harmony, Jake Morrison was enjoying dinner with Officer Peloff and several other crew members. The ship's chef had managed to synthesize something that tasted remarkably like barbecue ribs, and Jake was explaining the finer points of Earth cooking techniques. The key is low temperature and long cooking time, Jake said, gesturing with his fork. You want to break down the tough fibers slowly, so the meat stays tender, and the sauce should balance sweet, salty, and smoky flavors. Officer Peloff made notes on his datapad. And humans developed these cooking techniques for what purpose? To make tough meat edible, Jake replied cheerfully. Some of the best barbecue comes from the toughest cuts of meat. The animals that fight the hardest usually taste the best. The alien crew members exchanged glances, but Jake was too focused on his meal to notice. He was just happy to share his knowledge about Earth cuisine with his new friends. He had no idea that his casual dinner conversation had just been classified as intelligence vital to galactic security. 3 weeks had passed since the Federation Council's decision to attempt diplomatic contact with humanity. The massive diplomatic vessel Unity's Dawn approached Earth's outer system, escorted by a small fleet of Federation ships. On board were representatives from 50 different species, all hoping to establish peaceful relations with the galaxy's newest apex predators. Dr. Vextar stood on the observation deck, watching her grow larger in the viewports. The blue and white marble looked deceptively peaceful from this distance. It was hard to believe that such a beautiful world could produce beings capable of hunting razorhawks with improvised tools. First visual contact with the human homeworld announced Captain Nelleth from the bridge. Long-range sensors are detecting significant orbital infrastructure. They have space stations, communication satellites, and what appears to be a defensive grid. Admiral Krondar reviewed the tactical displays with professional interest. The defensive platforms are primitive but functional. Kinetic weapons primarily, with some directed energy systems. Not a significant threat to our vessels, but impressive for a species that only achieved spaceflight recently. They learn fast, Dr. Vextar observed. Jake's ship had incorporated several improvements based on Federation technology he observed during his time aboard our vessel. The communication array activated with incoming transmissions from Earth. Multiple human voices spoke in overlapping conversations, all asking the same basic questions. Who were they? Where did they come from, and what did they want? Officer Peloff worked to establish a stable communication link. I'm receiving hundreds of transmission sources from across the human system. They appear to have extensive communication networks. Put me through to their primary governmental authority, Dr. Vextar requested. That may be complicated, Peloff replied after several minutes of analysis. The humans appear to have multiple governmental structures across their planet. No single authority speaks for the entire species. This was an unexpected development. Most species the Federation encountered had unified planetary governments by the time they achieved interstellar travel. Humans had somehow reached the stars while still maintaining separate nations and territories. Connect us to whoever is responsible for space affairs in the region where Jake Morrison originated, Dr. Vextar decided. The main view screen activated to show a human woman in formal clothing. Her hair was gray and her expression was carefully neutral as she studied the alien faces before her. "I am Secretary of Space Affairs Linda Chun," the woman said. "I understand you have one of our citizens aboard your vessel." Dr. Vextar stepped forward. "Indeed, Captain Jake Morrison has been our guest for several weeks. He is unharmed and has been very helpful in our research." "Research into what exactly?" "Cultural exchange and psychological assessment. Standard protocols for first contact situations." Secretary Chen's expression remained carefully controlled, but Dr. Vextar could see the tension in her posture. "We would like Captain Morrison returned immediately, and we would like to know why 47 of our exploration vessels have reported contact with your ships across multiple star systems." Admiral Krondar joined the conversation. "Your species has been expanding rapidly into Federation territory. We needed to understand your intentions before formal contact could be established." "Our intentions are exploration and scientific research," Secretary Chen replied firmly. "The same as any spacefaring civilization." Dr. Vextar found himself in the unusual position of explaining to humans why their peaceful exploration had caused a galactic diplomatic crisis. "Secretary Chun, your species has some unique characteristics that concern the Federation. Captain Morrison demonstrated capabilities that we had not encountered before in sapient life forms." "What kind of capabilities?" Dr. Vextar hesitated. How could he explain that Jake had wanted to eat the galaxy's most feared predator without causing a diplomatic incident? "Your species appears to have an unusual relationship with dangerous situations and predatory life forms. This has raised questions about how humanity might interact with other Federation species." Secretary Chen's eyebrows rose. "You're concerned that we might be aggressive?" "Not exactly aggressive," Dr. Vextar replied carefully. "More predatory." The communication channel was silent for several seconds. Secretary Chen looked like she was trying to process this information. "Dr. Vextar, I think there may be some fundamental misunderstandings here. Why don't you bring Captain Morrison home, and we can arrange proper diplomatic discussions between our governments?" "That would be acceptable," Admiral Krondar agreed. "However, we would prefer to conduct initial negotiations in neutral space, perhaps aboard this vessel, with representatives from both our civilizations." 6 hours later, Jake found himself in the Unity's Dawn's main conference room, surrounded by more aliens than he had ever seen in one place. Representatives from dozens of Federation species filled the chamber, along with a delegation of human diplomats who had arrived via shuttle from Earth. Secretary Chen looked relieved to see Jake in good health. "Captain Morrison, are you all right? Have you been mistreated in any way?" Jake looked genuinely surprised by the question. "Mistreated? These folks have been great hosts. The food is excellent. The technology is fascinating, and I've learned more about xenobiology in the past few weeks than I ever thought possible." Dr. Vextar activated his holographic displays, showing Jake's test results to the human delegation. "Captain Morrison, we would like you to explain to your fellow humans what occurred during our cultural assessment procedures." Jake watched the footage of his encounters with the holographic predators. "Oh, the fear response tests. Yeah, those were really interesting simulations." Secretary Chen stared at the displays in amazement. "Jake, you're looking at some kind of monster and asking for eating utensils." "Well, it did look pretty tasty," Jake replied defensively, "and I was getting hungry." That was right around lunchtime. The human delegation exchanged glances. Dr. Sarah Kim, the xenobiologist on the diplomatic team, leaned forward with interest. "The aliens think we're dangerous because you wanted to eat their test creature?" "Apparently," Jake said, "though I still don't understand what the big deal is. It was obviously a hologram." Dr. Vextar decided to clarify the situation. "The creature Jake wanted to eat with a fork is called a Varathian Deathstalker. It is considered the most terrifying predator in known space. Most species cannot remain conscious when exposed to it." Dr. Kim looked at the holographic replay with professional interest. "It does look like it would have a lot of good meat on it, the tentacles especially." Several alien representatives made alarmed sounds. Dr. Vextar realized that Jake Morrison was not unique among humans. His entire species evaluated potential threats as potential meals. Secretary Chin took control of the situation with diplomatic skill. I think I understand confusion here. Humans have been apex predators for millions of years. We've learned to see almost everything as a potential resource rather than a threat. But we're also highly social and cooperative. We work together to solve problems rather than compete destructively. Your species hunts cooperatively, Admiral Krondar observed. This makes you significantly more dangerous than solitary predators. It also makes us better allies, Secretary Chin pointed out. Humans are fiercely loyal to our friends and protective of our communities. If the Federation treated us as partners rather than threats, you would find us valuable additions to your alliance. Council leader Tovash, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. What assurances can you offer that humanity will not view other Federation species as food sources? Jake laughed. We don't eat sapient species. That would be both immoral and illegal under human law. We might be predators, but we're not barbarians. Besides, Secretary Chin added, humans prefer our food to be already dead when we cook it. Much more convenient than trying to catch something that can shoot back. Dr. Vextar found himself smiling at the human approach to diplomacy. They were addressing the Federation's fears with humor and practical explanations rather than taking offense. The negotiations continued for hours, with both sides working to establish frameworks for peaceful coexistence. Humans would be granted full membership in the Federation, with the understanding that they would serve primarily in exploration and defense roles where their predatory capabilities would be assets rather than concerns. Jake found himself appointed as Earth's first cultural exchange coordinator, a position that seemed to involve a lot of eating dinner with alien diplomats and explaining human customs. One more question. Dr. Vextar said as the formal proceedings concluded, during our tests, were you ever actually afraid? Jake considered this seriously. Well, yeah, there was one moment when I was genuinely terrified. The alien delegation leaned forward with interest. What could frighten an apex predator from a death world? When Dr. Vextar asked. Jake looked embarrassed. When I thought you might not feed me dinner before sending me home. I'd been looking forward to trying alien cuisine, and I was worried I might miss out on the experience. The chamber fell silent. Then, slowly, laughter began to spread through the assembled delegates. Different species express amusement in different ways, clicks, whistles, flashing lights, and harmonic vibrations, but the emotion was universal. Dr. Vextar realized that humanity's integration into the Federation would be successful. Any species that could find common ground through shared meals and curiosity about other cultures would make excellent allies. As the diplomatic session concluded,